Okay, so let's talk about India's 2026 budget. Every budget tells a story, and this one's set in a pretty wild time, with AI changing everything and the world getting more and more unpredictable. The big question is, do the promises we heard actually match up with the hard numbers? Let's dig in and find out. All right, so when you first listen to the finance minister's speech, it sounds absolutely incredible. I mean, we're talking about a massive push for semiconductors, 7 high-speed rail corridors, brand new university townships, even using AI and governance. It paints this amazing picture of a futuristic India. But you gotta wonder, right? Is this the real plan or just a really good story? And that's the big question, isn't it? Do the numbers actually back up this grand vision? Because, talk is cheap. It's the money, the actual allocations, that tells you what the real priorities are. And when you start digging into the spreadsheets, well, that's where things get really interesting. Let's get into it. Okay, first things first, let's talk about something that affects pretty much everyone. Taxes, specifically for the middle class. With prices for everything going up, a lot of people were really hoping for some kind of tax break. So what happened? Did we get one? Well, the answer was nothing. Absolutely no change. The tax slabs are the same, the rates are the same. For millions of income taxpayers hoping for a little relief, the budget offered, well, nothing at all. Not exactly the news anyone wanted to hear. And get this, it actually got worse for a lot of people. If you invest in the stock market, your taxes actually went up. The government increased something called the Security Transaction Tax, or STT. That's a tax you pay on trades. And look at this. For futures trading, it more than doubled. So forget a tax cut. For investors, this budget meant a tax hike. So, how did the stock market react to all this? Well, not well. Not well at all. By the end of the budget speech, the Sensex had plummeted by 2,800 points. That's a huge drop. It was basically a massive thumbs down from the financial world. Okay, so that market reaction tells you something's up. To really understand what's going on, we have to follow the money. Where is the government actually getting all the cash to pay for these big promises? Let's take a look at the revenue side of things. All right, so the total budget is a massive 53.47 trillion rupees. But check out where it comes from. The single biggest piece of the pie at 24% is from borrowing. Yep, nearly a quarter of the budget is just borrowed money. After that, you've got our income taxes, corporate taxes, and GST making up the rest. Now, here's a really interesting breakdown. If you combine the income tax individuals pay with the GST we all pay on goods and services, that comes out to 36% of the government's earnings. Now look at corporate tax. That's 18%. So individuals are contributing literally double what corporations are. That's a pretty significant detail. Okay, so we've seen where the money comes from. Now for the other side of the equation. Where is it going? Let's check out some key areas, like social spending, and see if the budget's promises line up with the reality of the funding. On the education front, the promises were huge. 5 new university townships. They even talked about setting up labs for content creators. It sounds super modern, really forward-thinking. But when you look at the actual spending, it's a different story. The total spend on education is less than 3% of our GDP. And here's why that number is so important. For decades, the recommendation has been to spend at least 6% on education. We're not even at half of that recommended target. That's a massive gap. Okay, what about health? Again, some really positive announcements. We heard about new medical hubs, a big push to train 150,000 new caregivers, all really good stuff on paper. But again, we have to look at the numbers, and health spending is hovering at just around 2% of GDP. The World Health Organization's recommendation, it's 5%. So, just like with education, we're seeing a big gap between what's recommended by global experts and what's actually being spent. All right, so if the spending on education and health isn't meeting the targets, then maybe the focus is on infrastructure, right? Building up our cities, our transport. Let's see what the numbers say there. The vision is definitely ambitious. We hear a lot about empowering cities, building out those high-speed rail corridors, and creating new economic zones. It's all about a modern, connected India. And this is where it gets really surprising. The actual budget for urban development was cut. Yeah, you heard that right. It went down by 11.6% compared to the previous year. So on one hand, we're hearing about these huge futuristic projects, but on the other, the core funding for our cities is actually being reduced. It's confusing. You want a perfect example of this promise versus reality gap? Let's look at pollution control. In the 2024-25 budget, 8.58 billion rupees were allocated. That sounds like a decent amount of money to tackle a huge problem. Okay, but how much of that was actually spent? Brace yourself. Just 160 million rupees. That is less than 2% of the allocated amount. It's not just a shortfall, it's a staggering underspend on a critical issue. So we're seeing some major disconnects in social spending and infrastructure. But what about looking forward? How is the budget preparing India for big global shifts in trade, technology, and, well, taxes? So there are some clear moves to tackle these global shifts. There's the Semiconductor Mission 2.0, trying to make us more self-reliant, more money for electronics manufacturing, and some breaks to help exports. But then there's this one item that really stands out, a 20-year tax holiday for foreign companies to set up data centers here. And this raises a really important question, one that Dhruv Rathi pointed out. These data centers are incredibly thirsty for energy and water. So what does it mean for everyone else when we're giving huge tax breaks to companies to build things that put a massive strain on our own resources? And finally, let's talk about the biggest technological shift of our lifetime, AI. The budget does mention it, but that's about it. There's no major funding, no clear strategy to handle the massive disruption it's going to cause. We're talking about potentially 300 million jobs at risk globally, and the budget doesn't seem to have a real answer for that yet. So, after looking at the promises and then digging into the actual numbers, it leaves us with a big question. It's not just about this budget, but any budget. What's the true measure of success? Is it the grand vision and the exciting announcements? Or is it where the money actually goes? That's really something to think about.